This is Climate to Action, a CSUSM student podcast. Climate to Action is an initiative of the Climate Action and Sustainability Center at California State University, San Marcos, and my name is Kaiden Luna de la Fuente.
And I'm Molly Saruwatari. We're here to amplify voices and explore solutions in the fight against climate change and to address climate injustices for all living things.
We are committed to incorporating discussions on Indigenous knowledge in addressing the climate crisis and to providing a call to action in every episode.
But first, we'd like to acknowledge that our recording studio is located on the traditional territory of the Luiseño and Payacuicham people.
CSUSM and its surrounding areas are still home to the 6 federally recognized bands of the La Jolla, Paula, Palma, Pichenga, Rincon, and Soboba Luiseño Payacuicham people.
It's also important to acknowledge this land remains the shared space among the Cupeño, Kumeyaay, and Ipai peoples. Today's episode is focused on local climate actions and climate justice initiatives. We've invited Adrienne Fusek, the executive director and founder of In Good Company, to talk with us about this topic. Thank you for being with us today.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. Adrienne, can you tell us a little about yourself? What brings you to work on the climate crisis, and why did you decide to start In Good Company?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked. But first, I want to say thank you so much for the work you're doing, for having this podcast. I feel like it's really, really important to get the word out there. The more we talk about the climate crisis, the better. So thank you for the work you're doing. So about me, I am from Sacramento. So I grew up in Sacramento with my family, obviously. My siblings and I spent a lot of time outside.
Period.
Grew up in the 80s, kind of free-range parenting, something that they don't do now.
Right.
But in Sacramento, there's a lot of rivers. So I grew up right by the American River, and most of my time was spent outside. So my siblings and I would basically make forts. We would make jumps for our bikes. We would just spend all day out by the river, and we would find all kinds of cool stuff, newts and frogs. And we're just like curious about everything and just really fell in love with the natural environment and all of the different creatures we were finding and stuff. And so that was just my environment. And that's how I grew up. And I really learned to just love the natural environment and care a lot about it and all of the different creatures that are on this planet with us. So I started IGC after working in international education for about 19 years. So I was developing international programs for faculty members and students. And so that was great work. It was fun. I got to go to all these cool places. But I know this is completely irrational, but I felt personally responsible for all of those flights. And I reached this point where I felt like I was way more part of the problem than the solution. And so I felt like I could not continue doing that work. I had to take my time and energy and put it towards something more meaningful, especially in terms of trying to reduce our impact on the planet. Our negative impact. And so I started IGC during the pandemic because all of the things that were happening during the pandemic, but basically I felt like I had no choice. I had to put my time and energy on this planet toward trying to make sure that it can continue to support our life.
I really love that. That's really cool how you brought your upbringing into creating IGC, this amazing nonprofit here in San Diego. What is the core mission, would you say, of IGC? Of course, you kind of brought up how you want to be part of the solution, not the problem.
Yeah.
So what do you want our listeners to really see In Good Company as and see what they're for?
Yeah. So our mission is, and the board meticulously crafted every word.
Beautiful.
So our mission is to transform climate curiosity into a catalyst for environmental justice through education and engagement.
Oh, wow. That's a beautiful mission statement. I love that. So you actually offer carbon literacy for community action classes, or IGC does, to people in the San Diego community. What do you want San Diegans to gain from these classes? In other words, why should people go and take these classes?
Yeah, that's a good question. So education in itself is wonderful, self-fulfilling. I mean, it's fulfilling, right? But if there's no action attached to it, then there's a really limited amount of progress you can make, right?
Absolutely.
In terms of collective action. So I think the main thing that I want people to get out of these classes is to understand that each one of us has a role to play in terms of creating a better future. So we all have different strengths, and we don't need to be attacking the same problems all together at once because we all have different strengths. We could be moving toward climate solutions in a lot of different areas because that's needed, right?
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
we need to have hundreds of thousands of solutions across all sectors, and helping people understand where they can be most impactful is really what carbon literacy stands for. And also, we really want to build a critical mass of people who are pushing for climate solutions. So basically engaging with politicians, engaging with local nonprofits, and really forcing this change that we absolutely need to see.
I love that. And I do know that the carbon literacy for community action, the classes do cost money. I know that you just got, I believe it's a grant for scholarships, which is amazing. I know as a college student, sometimes it's like we try to find like hardships, or we find hardships in everything, like paying for new classes or something. But this is definitely something important, and especially for people who have never taken an environmental class. I've gotten the privilege of taking environmental classes as an ENBS major, but what are can you talk a little bit about the price and the scholarships that you offer, and kind of go on that so that people can understand what price wise?
Yeah, exactly. So as the title of this podcast implies, we are all about climate justice, right? And all about access. And if the price, which is $295 for the class, and the class is 8 hours long and it's synchronous online, it's pretty accessible in terms of logging in and taking the class. But if the price is a barrier, then we have scholarships. And then if we just need to waive it, if we don't have funders giving us scholarships at the moment, then we'll make sure that there's a way for people to participate. But actually, we have a lot of really generous donors who will donate scholarships. And actually, when they donate a scholarship, so they can donate $295 or more. And then when they donate, they can say whether or not they want to be put in touch with a person that receives that scholarship. So this is a way to sort of build collective action. Right. And so for funders too, it's impactful for them to understand, okay, well, this person actually is implementing these actions because of this education that I was able to help support. So yeah, I think out of all of the people who've taken our course, and obviously can pay if you want to pay, and that funding goes to IGC and helps, with all of this stuff and the accessibility. I think there have only been 2 people who paid.
Oh wow.
Price.
Okay. Period.
Yeah. So it's really it's very accessible.
I love that. Yeah, it definitely, accessibility is a huge thing, and I do know that you get a pretty sick little certificate that you can put on a resume. So definitely an amazing class for people to take. And you've mentioned carbon literacy, climate curiosity a few times now. Can you give us a quick definition of what those are and what they kind of mean to you?
So carbon literacy, as defined by the Carbon Literacy Project. So the Carbon Literacy Project is based in Manchester in the UK. And so they're the ones that actually accredit the course and review participants' evidence forms. So they and IGC issue the certificate. So according to the Carbon Literacy Project, carbon literacy is an awareness of the carbon dioxide costs and impacts of everyday activities and the ability and motivation to reduce emissions on an individual, community, and organizational basis.
Oh, wow.
So that could look like reducing your individual carbon burn, which is important.
Oh, yeah,
but
definitely.
way more importantly, it must look like partnering with others to push for systemic change away from a fossil fuel-based economy.
Yes, absolutely.
And then the other term, so climate curiosity, that in our mission, we basically use that as a catch-all term for climate anxiety, climate grief, climate despair. So we want to transform that energy, which is not productive at all, into action. And so in doing that through the education programs and also building a community and supporting folks through their actions, that's really kind of where it all comes together.
I love that. Building a community base, that's where it all starts. Obviously it starts with the individual, but it grows and the movement grows with the community. So really, I applaud you guys for doing all that you do.
Thank you.
So my next question for you is that IGC places a strong focus on reducing inequalities faced by lower income communities and uplifting historically excluded communities such as those who are predominantly people of color. Can you share any stories about how your organization was able to provide resources to these communities and what IGC inspired there?
Yeah. So first, I would say that we're actually really good at diversity.
Oh, love it.
So we provide a really opening, welcome space where people are encouraged to come in their wholeness, right? And so our cohorts, so each carbon literacy class, there's a cohort of people who do it together, which also helps with that community building piece. Each cohort has included a super good mix of people from different racial, ethnic backgrounds, different lived experiences. So it's a very safe space to ask questions and figure it out together. The whole idea is we come to this class not really knowing, right? And you go to the class to learn. And so that's what we focus on, is really kind of that collective intelligence and learning together. Again, in terms of resources, the scholarships really help.
Absolutely.
So there's no barrier there. And then our evaluation. So with all of the courses that we do, we make sure that we are doing what we're doing by asking people, their impressions of the class, what they learned, what they would like to improve, that kind of thing. But respondents to these evaluations say that they talk about climate change much more often than before taking the training.
Wow.
And as we know, talking about climate change and kind of normalizing it.
Like the first step.
Yeah, exactly. Normalizing these conversations and being curious. I mean, that's really the first step. In terms of civic engagement and advocacy for emissions reductions at school and work, people who have responded to these surveys say they do that more often than before taking the course. And then also several people have reported that they have obtained new jobs, gotten promotions, gotten pay increases, specifically related to transitioning from non-climate related work into climate related work, or emissions reduction work, or work related to basically what they learned in carbon literacy.
Yeah, definitely. The climate, working in anything that has to do with emissions, energy, environmentalism, it's such a demand. So I bet this definitely helps, being able to take this carbon literacy class. And it's cool that you guys have these measures and people coming back and reporting back to you about how the class has directly impacted them and how they've taken it and ran with it. And I also love, you mentioned when you first started speaking about how you take In Good Company and IGC into the different communities. I like how you emphasized that it's a very welcoming space, because even as a college student I'm a junior, so I've been doing this for almost 3 years now. It's every time I walk into a class, it's intimidating. And it's I know people, but it's just scary. And so especially my first time ever taking an environmental course, I remember I was so nervous. And so I love that it's a welcoming environment, because like you said, these people, a lot of the times, they don't know what climate literacy is, or anything along those lines. So
I think too, because our courses are open to the public, so it's not like a college course.
Yeah, exactly.
But because of that, we have high schoolers
that's
along
amazing.
with in the same cohort as retired professionals. And so they're all kind of at that same level in terms of, let's figure this out together.
I love that.
And I think it might be initially, before you get to meet people, a little bit,
of course,
a little bit intimidating. But as we kind of get those conversations going and just talk, break it down to the basics, it's it's literacy, it's carbon literacy, and so you're not supposed to know anything coming into it, right? You're gonna learn it all together. And so I think the diversity in terms of age is important too, and what people
absolutely
how people spend their time, what do they do during the day, and then bringing that all together is actually a really cool experience.
That's really cool too. I love that there's high schoolers that are willing to make the action from a young age to retirees who are wanting to still learn, because I know that a lot of people think that older generations don't really care about the climate, and clearly they're breaking down these barriers because they're taking your class. Would you ever be open to maybe presenting? I used to work in an elementary school. Would you ever be open to taking IGCs and maybe doing a much toned down version of the literacy
for
class?
Kids? Ooh, maybe. So each course has to be accredited through the Carbon Literacy Project.
Of course.
And so in order to do a class for them, I would put together the curriculum and send it to them for approval and stuff. But I mean, I could always come and talk to kids.
Oh, yeah. No, I totally. And it starts young. Genuinely, the movement starts so young.
So I know in this, we're talking about carbon literacy, but we also do workshops in the community.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so these workshops, so we actually sell them to clients. If a lot of people, working at corporations or whatever, they have professional development or team building activities. And so this is it's a workshop that focuses on climate science, and it's very collaborative. Because we have fee-paying clients, we're able to do it for free in the community. So that's another thing that we do a lot of. But those are super good for kids because there's different versions of the workshop. And so, and that's just, it's very engaging, very hands-on. There's an artistic component, which I think is cool.
Perfect.
So yeah, we can absolutely talk about that.
Yeah, kids love like finger painting or just playing in the dirt, playing in the mud. So definitely.
I mean, I do too.
Yeah, right? Who doesn't? So IGC does emphasize an idea of a just future in your vision. What does this future look like, and how does IGC's work bring us closer to achieving this just future?
That's a good question.
Thank you.
So we envision a future where people are actively engaged in sustaining justice for people on the planet because we've already achieved it. Right. So we're not dealing with all this eco despair and all the anxiety and all of that stuff. We're actually informed and engaged and actively participating in maintaining that clean, beautiful, green future where everybody has access to clean air, access to food, and access to clean energy, right? And easy transportation that's maybe even social, So this future that we envision is way better than the reality we have now, even though it seems like things are pretty great. There could be, there's so many different benefits to reducing our reliance on fossil fuels in terms of health, financial, and I mean, obviously environmental. So that's the future we envision, and we work for every day.
I love that future. I envision that. I know it's not just about me having a clean earth, but it's about my kids, my grandkids, my great-grandkids having a clean earth and everything like that. And like to kind of backtrack, we were talking about the community and your workshops going into the community, the carbon literacy classes in the community. What role does the public play in driving changes needed for climate justice? And how do you ensure these communities have a voice in decision making? Like we talked about earlier, there's a lot of communities that don't have a voice because of San Diego's very affluent versus very much there's a huge range of income and medium income household in San Diego County. So how do you ensure that all communities are heard, not just the ones that maybe are a little bit more affluent?
Yeah, that's such a good question because so the communities who are busy working and trying to feed the kids and, going from job to job and, stopping to pick up fast food for the kids, get some calories for the kids on the way home, that kind of thing. Those are the communities that the politicians need to hear from the most, right?
Absolutely.
So those are the communities that have to be able to articulate the problems that they're seeing in their lives, have the vocabulary and the confidence to show up to public meetings and say, look, this is my lived experience and I am an expert in that and have that, confidence to go and push for those changes. So I think what it really comes down to is helping folks identify what is their unique area where they can contribute, right? And so if you are in marketing and marketing is your total jam, you love it. You could still work in climate,
Oh, absolutely.
You could be promoting climate compatible organizations rather than climate irresponsible organizations. And so I think it really comes down to understanding that we all have a role to play in terms of what we're really good at, and then we can focus on that one thing and then relieve a little bit of that anxiety by understanding too that everybody else has their role to play. And so collectively we're going to have a really, really big impact. And then individually I don't have to do it all on my own.
Yeah,
right?
That's definitely so nice.
So it's all about working together.
That's a huge part. I know a lot of people like to take on the whole idea of, I'm going to change the world, which is an amazing mindset to have, but also lean on your peers, lean on your neighbors. They're here to help you. Take a carbon literacy class. Obviously, you're going to find people, like-minded individuals who want to make a change. And I know being like in the Environmental Stewards Association here on campus or being in a Greek organization, you see this like people from all backgrounds, all majors, people who know what Greek life is, people who know what environmentalism is, and coming together in these organizations here at Cal State San Marcos. It's really cool because there's such specific roles that everybody gets a chance to be involved and feel like
Right.
they're involved,
Yeah.
no matter their background. Like for the environmental org, like we have people who are sociology majors on our executive board, or
Mhm.
for my sorority, we have people from marketing to me in environmental studies. So it's really cool to see all of this. And definitely, I also see being in these organizations how much collaboration with individuals and with the community impacts our mission. And for example, fundraising for a philanthropic partner. Do you or does In Good Company have any specific collaborations you hope to have in the future?
Yeah, and I want to mention before I get into that
Mhm.
that the affluent communities too
Mhm.
have a really important role to play.
Oh, absolutely.
And need to leverage that influence, right? And so
absolutely.
really what we want to encourage people to do is analyze who is watching what they're doing,
Mhm.
who is going to be influenced by their actions,
Mhm.
and then take that
Mhm.
and incorporate climate action and work. And so everybody across all income groups, all sectors, everybody has a role to play.
Mhm.
In terms of future collaborations, we really want to build a collective
Mhm.
that will be modeled after, it's called Give a Shit Collective.
Love it. Love it.
through, that is through Chicago Votes.
Oh.
And so what it is really, it's led by creatives. So
Mhm.
artists, performers, musicians, DJs, etc. So folks who have just this natural inclination to be
Yeah.
very creative.
Mhm.
And this collective will creatively engage others to find solutions
Mhm.
to how to engage politically,
Right.
right? So it's
Right.
all about
Huge.
policy change
Mhm.
and influencing politicians to make the decisions in favor of our future,
Right. Of course.
and the ability of the planet to support our life.
Yeah.
And so by putting together a collective of folks who just naturally think very creatively,
Mhm.
that will help us, I feel, and
Mhm.
break down a lot of the barriers.
Right.
Because people are doing a lot of really great work.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And I think by connecting maybe like huge dance parties or something like that and just getting a lot of attention
Yeah.
around this, I think that's an unexplored area for sure. We
Well,
wanna,
yeah, and
get
definitely
into
like
that.
this year's so important. Of course, it's an election year. I literally went out and dropped in my ballot this
Nice.
morning.
Good
So
job.
thank you. Got to do my part. And so it's huge to definitely get the voice out so that people know how to vote, how to make the change. Presidents maybe can be influenced because you never know how far like one person's action can grow into a community, to a national, to a global idea. And so that's super amazing. I applaud you for that.
Thank
Definitely.
you.
Yeah. Well, Adrienne, thank you so much again for talking with us today.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. You have been so informative, so amazing. And we do this thing on Climate to Action where we do a call to action that our listeners will hear our personal call to action that we wrote for them later. But do you have a personal call for action for our listeners or any resources you can provide or anything like that?
I do. I have a couple that are my favorite.
Okay.
So the first one helps you identify your climate superpower.
Love it.
So Dr. Ayanna Elizabeth Johnson, who is a complete badass.
Period.
So she has created this Venn diagram.
Mhm.
So it's like these 3 circles and they overlap in the middle. And so basically she helps you think through what brings you joy,
Mhm.
what you're good at,
Mhm.
and what needs to be done. And then the intersection of those different things, that's your climate superpower. And so I will give you a link to her TED Talk and
Beautiful.
that worksheet to put in the show notes.
Beautiful.
And then the second one is download the Climate Action Now app, which
Ooh,
is
okay.
basically, it has these pre-created forms that go directly to your elected official. So there's somebody on the back end. It's probably a climate reality project person.
Right. Yeah.
From the Climate Reality Project, which is led by Al Gore. So you put in your address, and so automatically they know who your elected officials are, and they're keeping track of what are the different climate related actions that need to happen.
Right.
And so then you can just go in there and fill in your name and then send these emails, maybe call or do whatever. But it's a really, really easy way to take direct action.
Oh,
so
that's cool.
I will put the link to that app for you. I'll give that to you to put in the show notes.
Beautiful. And then is it like does it also see like county specific environmental impacts, or is it more of like a national govern?
All of it.
Oh,
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah. So there could be things that are in your local area, initiatives that are at the state level or even federal level.
Oh, beautiful. Beautiful.
Yeah.
That's so amazing.
Want to hear more from Climate to Action, a CSUSM student podcast? Listen wherever you get your podcasts and follow us on our socials at Climate to Action.
For Instagram and YouTube, that's Climate to Action. For TikTok, it's at Climate, the number 2 Action. Visit for updates, behind the scenes contents, and more.
Finally, Climate to Action wants to remind you to take climate action. We challenge you to take the first step in your own climate journey. Get involved with a local organization like In Good Company, attend a carbon literacy class, or connect with one of San Diego's many sustainability initiatives. Let's transform our climate curiosity into climate action together. Remember, every small change can create a big impact when we work collectively.
Until next time, this is Climate to Action, signing off.